Okay, so we're going to address what we spoke about last week as well, about how we handle certain situations we face ourselves in, whether it's a big game, a big moment in the game, trial, various situations where it's the situation and the way we interpret the situation that has an impact on our emotion. Now, it's the exercise, the aim is to be aware, understand our emotion, and this enables us to better prepare and manage our emotion, because our emotion impacts our behavior. So what I'm covering today is sort of loosely based on what we call the ABC model, which was an intervention in the 50s and 60s. Albert Ellis, American psychoanalytical psychotherapist, developed rational emotive behavior, and that was to explain dysfunctional behavior from a psychotherapeutic perspective. And that was based on, say, for example, irrational thinking and feeling and the consequences of the instinctive interpretation of real perceived situations. And that laid the foundation of the ABC model of psychotherapy and later became the central principle of CBT. Now, we're not doing that as such, but we're going to sort of use that to a point in a performance for football perspective to use and be able to become more aware how we feel our emotions. So the idea is you've got a situation, guys. It's our beliefs about a situation, and that impacts our thoughts, how we think about it. What we think about impacts our feelings, our behavior, and physiology. So an example could be you've got a penalty. That's a situation. Perhaps you believe you could miss. What if it goes wrong? And you've got all these thoughts spiraling in your mind. Then you start to feel nervous, anxious, scared. Behavior, your process that you normally use in training goes out the window, and physically you kind of tighten up. And it's a bit like Thomas last week said, people get the yips sometimes, where it's the pressure they're under, the situation. That could be a free kick, because you could score maybe 90 times out of 100, 90 times out of 100 a penalty in training. You get to a game, but it's our interpretation. So the technique I'm going to cover with you, and I can email you I'll email it to Tony tomorrow, actually, the Word document, because I can't upload it, but I'll go through it with you, is a really useful process to diffuse. And that could be, guys, for a past game, or if you played against a past player, and this player's got the better of you, or he or she's got the better of you. And this could even be, used in academic, in school, in college, it's very transferable. But let's say focus on football here. So what you do first of all, because you think there's a knock-on effect, is you think about the situation. It might be a previous situation where a certain player has got the better of you, or perhaps it might be something coming up, a game. You've got a trial, or something coming up, a big game coming up, a cup final. And what you do, the first step is you sort of, if it's a previous event, you sort of write down what happened, where, when, who, how, or it could have been a trial in the past that didn't go well, or a match, something coming up. So you sort of, suppressing is not good. That's the worst thing you can do. So writing it down or talking to someone about it, whether it's me, Tony, or someone, you drop me an email, or whether it's someone at the club, and you say, okay, this is how I feel. I played against this player a few weeks ago. I didn't play really well. Every time I play against, this is how I feel. I've got this trial coming up. The worst you can do is suppress it and sort of, keep a lid on it, because it's like a fizzy pop. You shake it, bang. It's better to speak about it. There's no shame in sort of being afraid or thinking, okay, well, I'm a bit concerned. What if I get asked to take a penalty? And that's the first thing you do. The next thing you do is you think about the mood, the emotions you feel. So the emotion you feel about the game you underperform, the emotions you feel about the trial coming up, the emotions you feel about the penalty you got to take. And you rate that from 0 to 100. So if I say I'm 90% nervous taking that penalty from 0 to 100, 100 being high, then there's a good chance I might underperform taking penalty. I'm nervous to play against that player. If it's really high on that scale, or I'm afraid, then it's going to impact my performance. Okay. If I'm playing a team that's a really high level, I'm bound to have nerves, bound to be slightly afraid. That's fine, but managing is key. Okay. And if it was a previous event or a previous game that didn't go really well, then you sort of become aware of how intense it was. Or something coming up, how intense is it? Then what you do is you think about the physical sensation. And the physical sensation is what happens is do I feel butterflies in my stomach? Is it manifesting in my neck? Or, you're able to be more self-aware. The mind-body is one system, the mind-body connection. A bit like, say, for example, we get embarrassed, we sort of blush. The two are connected. We get nervous. Our biochemistry, so we can impact the way we feel. So going back to what was said earlier about confidence, what can we do? One thing we can do that can impact our biochemistry is use our physiology. And what I mean by that is sort of regulate. Maybe physiology could be putting our shoulders back, walking straight. It could be breathing. You feel nervous. It could be just breathing, exhaling slightly more than you inhale for 3 or 4 minutes. That's maybe inhaling 4 seconds, exhaling 6 seconds, or 5, 7, or whatever works for you. It's not my area of expertise, but I read some stuff and I spoke to some people about that. But breathing can sort of calm the nervous system down. Then what you do is you assess the unhelpful thoughts. What went through my mind, or what's going through my mind coming into that trial. You might think, well, I get a chance again. If I miss the penalty, what's going to happen if I, land of what if? Or it could be the game I played, it was a disaster. And you're able to sort of get that out of the system. Think, okay, ask you what's bothering me? What am I responding to? What are those thoughts, memories? What are they telling me? So it's once again not suppressing it. It's sort of being open about what's going on. And then you can ask yourself, well, what's the worst thing that can happen about that? The best thing or the most realistic thing? So what's the worst thing that can happen in the game? Well, it's the penalty. It could be the worst thing, obviously. The most realistic thing is I got to process and focus on that. The keeper could do a world-class save. I could score. The best thing is I score. And the best, what we're aiming to do is to sort of minimize on that spectrum of sort of pessimism and sort of see it for what it is. See the situation for what it is. Okay, if you turn up, you put the ball down, you strike it, keep a world-class save, well, there's not a great deal you could have done about that. You've done the best you can. Okay, these things happen. We go again. Okay, that's the idea. But obviously, if you can sort of do the best you can, you've got a much better chance. It's about giving yourself the best chance to succeed. And the way to do that is to do this. And the next step is really important. Is whenever you find your mind racing and sort of telling you you're going to miss, you're not going to make it, you're going to mess things up, just stop, you take a breath, and ask yourself, is it fact or opinion? Okay. What would someone else say about the situation? Try and think of it. What would a coach say? What's the bigger picture? Is there another way of seeing it? You know, you could see it as an opportunity to go out there and give it your best shot. And this is a really important thing. If someone asks you, if a player asked you guys, if a player said to you, whatever you feel nervous or afraid of, if a player asked you that you were coaching, can you give me some advice on what to do? What would you say to them? And that's a really important point, because we can then externalize it. Okay, what would I say to someone else who's experiencing what I'm experiencing? And that sort of helps you. Is my reaction in proportion to the event? Am I reacting? Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I didn't play well, but I've played, 19 games good. Or so the key is to sort of get a balanced perspective. Now, I'm not suggesting this process is going to work for everyone all the time, but it will help you then to decide your next response. So the final piece in the jigsaw is, well, what do I do next time in the next game? Or what do I do when I have to sort of do that skill, when I've got to execute that process? What's my best response? So I know if you've got to take a penalty, the best response is to focus on the process, on the technique, and put the outcome to one side. Do what you do in training over and over again, and just block everything out and just focus on your technique, the process. Well, you've practiced. You study the keeper, you think he's got a weakness, or she's got a weakness, and you say, I'm going to go left, go right. Then you sort of make that decision and focus on the process. If it's a trial, you focus on the process, not the outcome. Will I get the contract? Want to get it? You don't need those extra thoughts in your head. Focus on enjoying the game. And then what you do is you rewrite the emotion that we talked about earlier at a 0 to 100. And that should start to come down. So if it's 90% on a scale of 0 to 100, afraid, that should start dropping down to maybe 50, 40. And if it starts dropping down, it's going to have a big impact on your playing, because obviously, if you've got all these thoughts going through your mind, I mentioned earlier before, how we appraise the situation, our thoughts impact our feelings impacts our behavior. If I'm afraid, I might not take the penalty as well as I could do. I might not play that trial as well as I could do, or that game, that cup final. Physiologically, you've all seen players go to type before they knew how to do the skill. And then you've got to think, well, what can I do differently? What can I do in the next game? If you're sort of comparing it to a game you didn't play well, or what can I do more effectively in that situation? What will the consequences do? That I can send you, because it's a lot to take on board, but this is recorded too. You can go back through it. It's a really useful technique. And the idea, well, the main aim really, one of the main aims of the technique is to be aware of our own thoughts, be aware of our own feelings, and be aware of how they impact our behavior physiologically. And then the interventions we do and we've been working together on are aimed, a lot of them, at changing our beliefs. Or how can I reframe it? How else can I see it? They are aimed at impacting our behavior. Or behaviorally, what can I do different? Okay, they are focused on physiology and emotional regulation. So we are aiming at those areas to manage those areas and improving those areas, whether it's visualization, whether it's anchoring, whether it's sort of talking about it. A number of things we sort of covered, belief exercises to explore that. It can have a big impact, because the way we see a situation is key. How we interpret it has an impact on what we do. So let's say, for example, to use a general example, okay, how we appraise a situation. So if you're walking down the street and you saw, the opposite if you're walking and you saw a friend and they you had a minor fallout a few days earlier and they walked straight, didn't acknowledge you, you might start thinking, have they fallen out with me? Are they not speaking to me no more? That might impact your behavior. You might send a text saying, why did you ignore me? You might ignore them back. So that impacts your behavior. But if you think of it, well, maybe they did not see me. Maybe they were preoccupied, under pressure. They didn't notice I was there. You might send a text saying, well, are you okay? So what I'm saying by suggesting that is all things could be true, but it just sort of shows you how the way we interpret a situation impacts. So in sport, in football, you think, well, okay, if I miss the target, if I let the fans down, if I let my family down, and these things might be true, you might feel that way, but equally, if that's circulating in your head, it's going to affect your performance. You're putting extra pressure on yourself. So really, you've got your goals, your outcomes, and you can sort of park them to one side and focus on the process, the situation. Maybe think, okay, well, this is an opportunity for me to go out there and prove myself, to play with freedom, to play and express myself. I'm young, I'll get chances, I'll prepare, I'll keep training. And that has a big impact how you feel. How you feel, and mentioned earlier before about confidence, will have a big impact on how you behave and how you execute skill in the game. So what I'll do now is we'll sort of take questions on that, and I'll sort of end the recording shortly and sort of touch base on those areas. So there we go.